It's the pattern integrity that we're seeing playing out. The comments that everybody made at the beginning of this are really insightful. I'll just point, with the mechanistic worldview, the Cartesian worldview, even how science was used, Darwinian science. I'll just use as a key word for that, the Enlightenment. That has just still not being challenged. It is indicative almost, Christine, that you said it was only in last year that you realised all the philosophy had been written in the Western world anyway, because that's certainly not the case in other places by men. But to even challenge the age of enlightenment is a very dangerous thing to do in our world now. And yet the philosophers of the Enlightenment really, the philosophy justified the practice of this huge scale genocide to take over countries, particularly in America. 145 million people were killed. The official number is this 8 million kind of wandering around here and there somewhere. So it was this terra nullius, the destruction of the land, the terraforming of the land, the domination of nature, the enslavement of other people. This was all justified by this philosophy that we still hold up as enlightening for us. So you've got the principal components of the Enlightenment, like Immanuel Kant. He was a huge advocate of the hierarchy of humans, so the black human being at the bottom. And he's got this atrocious paragraphs in his writing of how blacks should be whipped and beaten, with what they should be whipped and beaten because of the thickness of their skin. The pain can't be felt if it's this type of birch rod or that type of whip. John Locke, another key figure of the Enlightenment, he wrote the slave constitutions for North Carolina, for Barbados. So this duality is just totally embedded in that DNA of Western life and Western thought. The Enlightenment really applied to an elite group of white men. It didn't apply to women. When the Constitution of America was written, the Statue of Liberty is a woman, but women had no rights whatsoever. So it's a really profound psychological deformation that continues to this very day in order to justify the murder of so many people, of the terraforming, the whole reconstruction of the land. There has to be a story that's told that it's good to do this. You've got the white man's burden, the civilizing mission, the manifest destiny, and the religion. When the conquistadores set off, it was the Pope that said, yes, go and get that gold. And you've had that sanctioned almost by every president and every prominent thinker. In America, we are doing God's work. How many wars have we heard now that are done in the name of God? And so this is, it is the Wetico thing. It's a deeply psychological distortion. James Baldwin talks about it brilliantly in his work, I Am Not Your Negro. You have to construct this thing that is so inferior, that so deserves to be wiped off the face of the earth. You can see it happening in Israel right now, that needs to be subjugated, that needs to be whipped. Even the scientist Linnaeus, when you looked at the classification of, he's famous for classifying plants, he also classified humans and ranked them, the white at the top, and then the yellow, then the red, and then the black, and prescribed their characteristics and how they should be treating. These are still figures that are held up as huge, huge shapers of our worldview, of our science, and they're still revered. I'm not saying everything they did was wrong, but it's you can't have that in your pattern of how you see and understand life. And, as Christine's saying, this compartism, it is a kind of mental unwellness, imbalance, out of balance with nature. Even the interpretation on Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest was used to, which isn't really what he said at all, but was used to justify this wiping out of what was considered inferior species. Nature would have done it anyway. We're just accelerating the process. So it's so embedded in our psyches as people who grew up in the West, and it's spread across the world, many parts of the world, and it's deeply, deeply rooted in the American psyche, to the point that if you challenge that, Hendy Andrews, a black historian, he challenged the Enlightenment, the amount of deaths, the threats he received were, immeasurable. And then Hollywood kicks in. So you've already had the mainstream philosophies and the religions getting behind this destruction of other people on earth. And then you have this myth-making machine that comes in on steroids, which is the media industry. That I'm talking about Hollywood, it's spanned out through everything now, to Twitter, to social media, but they're so profound when you talk about making America great again. People see John Wayne, they see that ultimate cowboy and his horse and all the good things he was doing, ridding the land of those pesky, violent, savage Indians. He went out and he made America great. You had to be able to carry your guns because you had to get rid of those violent savages that were coming for your land, which was your land because you'd gone in there and you had taken it because you were fulfilling the white man's burden. And you had to have your guns because those terrible, ignorant Negroes who may get up and attack you at any minute for no reason at all, not the fact they might be slightly angry, even though that people, Trump still uses that rhetoric. The immigrants, they're coming in here, they're violent, psychopathic murderers, he called them. They're going to take everything. The irony of that being that it was violent, psychopathic murderers that took the United States and many of the other colonies, and then they had to have their guns to defend themselves against people who really tried to fight back but didn't have, they didn't have the superior weaponry to do so. They've inverted, and Trump does that in every single speech. He inverts what he's doing to people and to the system, to individuals, to what, in actual fact, that's what he is doing. And people are so used to those psychological tricks that they don't even recognize that's what's happening to them. There's a fantastic First Nations woman called Namonte Nkemo who wrote a letter to world leaders a few years ago. She's an Ecuadorian Amazonian leader. And she said, you have Kawari, she uses the word. This is why we don't have the language. Wetiko is a very powerful word. It is this psychology of why would you destroy entire ecosystems? Why would you cut up the system that supports you? It has to be a deep psychological illness. We can shortcut that with it's an Ojibwe word, wetiko. The Ecuadorian Amazonian word is kawari, which means power without wisdom. And we are in an age now where there are people like the leaders like Trump, they have huge power, but they have no wisdom of how to use it. And they are just the proponents, the power that they wield is handed to them by the legacy of a system that is just built on genocide and violence and retelling the narrative to turn horror into heroism. And I think that's why you see the appeal of Trump in the United States. It's not something that's ever gone away, we were ever moving out of. It's just there. As soon as it's legitimized again, as it did as with Trump in 2016, it rears its head to the surface. We have the same issue in Britain post-Brexit. We have, again, that legitimization of othering. We've had more the heavy rise of the far right here and horrendous riots. So it really is a systemic will that we have to look at how we got here and then rethink, unpick our stories and create a narrative that's compatible, a philosophy, a belief system that is compatible with life on Earth. Otherwise, we are stuck in this cycle that sees Trump coming back every 4 years or so, hacking away more and more until there's nothing left. And maybe from the collapse, we do get the resurrection. But let's hope to God we don't have to go to total collapse and we can reimagine enough of what it means to be a human being, given global nature of our understanding of ourselves now, or the possibility to do so.